The scrapyard floated in the darkness like a graveyard of giants. Thousands of dead starships drifted in silent orbits around Kelthais 9, a planet that had been destroyed centuries ago in a war nobody alive could remember. This was where the Galactic Confederacy sent its failures, warships too damaged to repair, too dangerous to keep, too expensive to properly destroy. Mackenzie Torres stood at the viewing port of the salvage shuttle, her breath fogging the glass as she pressed closer. Her brown eyes scanned the metallic corpses floating past, looking for something, anything. She had 6 months to find a ship worth salvaging, or the Virin crime syndicate would sell her contract to the mining colonies. Nobody survived the mining colonies. "You're wasting your time, human," rasped Gricht, the Virin overseer assigned to watch her. His scales clicked together as he moved, a sound that always made Mac think of knives being sharpened. "There's nothing here but garbage. Expensive garbage that will kill you if you touch it wrong." She needed something special, something everyone else had overlooked. Then she saw it. The ship hung alone in a cleared zone, separated from the other wrecks by at least 2 kilometers. Warning beacons floated around it, their red lights blinking a message every salvager understood. Danger, radiation, do not approach. The vessel itself was massive, easily 300 meters long, with the sleek predatory lines of a Kryn Empire battlecruiser. But something was wrong with it. The hull had a strange quality like oil on water, colors shifting across its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "What's that one?" Mac asked, pointing. Gricht's scales clicked faster, nervousness, Mac had learned. "The Valiant Dawn, Kryn military. 5 years ago, reactor breached during a battle, killed the entire crew in seconds. The radiation fused half the internal systems into slag. It's been scheduled for demolition 3 times, but..." He trailed off. "But what? Why do you ask? Even if you could somehow survive working inside it, the systems are too damaged. There's nothing salvageable except raw materials, and you die trying to extract them. How much for salvage rights? If you can't produce something worth selling by then, your debt increases by 30%, and we sell your contract immediately." The airlock had opened with surprising ease, as if the ship had been waiting for her. Mac's suit sensors immediately screamed warnings about radiation, but the levels were actually lower than expected. Strange, but not dangerously high. She could work here without dying immediately, which was all she needed. The interior was a nightmare. Corridors twisted at odd angles where the hull had warped from heat. Control panels had melted into abstract sculptures of metal and crystal. Emergency lighting flickered weakly, powered by systems that should have died years ago. The air was breathable but tasted like copper and ozone. Mac moved deeper into the ship, her magnetic boots clanking against the deck. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back. This was insane. This was suicide. This was exactly the kind of stupid human behavior that made other species shake their heads in confusion. But Mac had always seen things differently. Where others saw destruction, she saw possibility. The reactor breach hadn't just broken the ship, it had transformed it. As she reached the engineering section, she began to understand why. The reactor core sat in the center of a massive chamber, still glowing with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. From it, crystalline structures had grown throughout the ship like veins, following the paths where energy conduits had once been. Mac approached carefully, scanning with her handheld device. The readings made no sense. The crystal formations were conducting power, but not in any way her equipment recognized. It was as if the ship had developed its own circulatory system, distributing energy through pathways that had formed naturally during the disaster. "Cascade fusion," Mac whispered, remembering an obscure research paper she'd read years ago. It was a theoretical phenomenon, where a reactor breach under specific conditions could create self-organizing energy channels instead of simple destruction. No one had ever proven it could happen. No one had ever survived it happening to study it. Until now. Mac sat down on the deck, ignoring the radiation warnings on her suit. Her mind was already racing with possibilities. If she could map these crystal veins, understand their structure, maybe she could use them instead of fighting them. Traditional ship systems needed complex wiring, but this was like having power conduits already built into every surface of the ship. She pulled out her tools and got to work. The first week was brutal. Mac worked 18-hour days, mapping the crystal network by hand. She set up a small living space in what had once been the captain's quarters, sleeping in her suit because she didn't trust the environmental systems yet. She ate recycled ration bars and drank water that tasted like metal. Every muscle ached. Every breath felt heavy. But slowly, patterns emerged. The crystal veins weren't random. They followed a logic distributing power based on structural stress points and system priorities. It was almost organic, like the ship had grown a nervous system. Mac began to understand that the Valiant Dawn wasn't dead. It was dormant, waiting for someone who could speak its new language. She started small, connecting a portable generator to one of the crystal veins, watching how the energy dispersed, testing different frequencies. The ship responded, its internal lighting growing stronger. Panels that had been dark for 5 years flickered to life. By the second week, Mac had a theory. By the third week, she had a plan. By the fourth week, she knew she was right. The Valiant Dawn could be rebuilt, but not as it had been. Trying to restore the original systems would be impossible and pointless. Instead, Mac could create something new. A hybrid ship that used the crystal network as its core, with human improvisation filling the gaps. It wouldn't follow any known engineering principles. It would be dangerous, unpredictable, and completely unprecedented. It would be perfect. Max stood in the main reactor chamber, surrounded by her diagrams and calculations, and laughed. The sound echoed through the empty corridors, making the ship seem less lonely. She was going to do it. She was going to take this dead, impossible wreck and turn it into something the galaxy had never seen. Gricht and the Viren Syndicate thought they'd sent her here to die or fail. Instead, they'd given her exactly what she needed, a challenge worthy of human stubbornness. "All right, old girl," Max said, patting the crystalline wall beside her. "Let's show them what humanity can do with their garbage." For a human mechanic who'd been told her entire life that she was impossible, that felt like plenty of time. 3 months had passed since Mac claimed the Valiant Dawn, and the scrapyard had started to notice something strange. The dead ship that everyone avoided was now glowing with steady light. Energy readings were spiking at odd hours, and most disturbing of all, there were sounds. Mechanical hums and electrical whispers that made the nearby salvage crews nervous. Mac was too busy to care about rumors. She stood in what used to be the weapons control room, her clothes stained with grease and her hair tied back in a messy knot. Around her, 3 portable screens displayed diagrams that would make any certified engineer file an immediate safety complaint. She was connecting systems that were never meant to touch, routing power through pathways that didn't exist in any manual, and using repair techniques that her instructors back on Earth had specifically told her would cause explosions. So far, she'd only caused 2 small explosions. That was progress. "This is insane," a voice said from the doorway. Mac turned to see a tall, mantis-like alien watching her with large, compound eyes. He wore the gray coveralls of a salvage engineer, and his translator badge identified him as Tixnel, a Thalaxian. Mac had seen him around the scrapyard but never spoken to him. "Probably," Mac agreed, turning back to her work. "But it's working. You're using the cascade fusion contamination as a power distribution network. It's considered an academic curiosity at best, a death sentence at worst. No one has ever successfully harnessed it." He paused. "Until you, apparently." I should report you to the Confederacy Engineering Board. What you're doing violates at least 40 safety regulations." Professional horror warred with scientific curiosity on his face. Curiosity 1. Show me what you've done. She showed Tixnell how she'd mapped the crystal veins, how she'd discovered they responded to different energy frequencies, how she'd started using them to replace traditional wiring. The ship was becoming a distributed network. Instead of centralized systems, every section could access power directly from the crystalline structure. "This shouldn't be possible," Tixnell kept saying, but his hands were already pulling up calculations on his own datapad, testing Mac's theories. "Human engineering philosophy," Mac said. "If it works, it's not stupid." His eyes widened as he recognized the corridor design. "This is a Kryn Tempest-class battlecruiser," he said softly. "I trained on ships like this before." He trailed off, pain crossing his face. "Before the reactor breach that killed everyone," Mac asked gently. The Kryn nodded. "I'm Vel. I was supposed to serve on the Valiant Dawn. My assignment was delayed by 2 weeks. By the time I arrived at the staging area, the ship was already declared lost." He touched the wall reverently. "I've been working in this scrapyard for 3 years. I see her every day, but I never thought anyone could bring her back." His knowledge of Kryn systems was invaluable, even if most of those systems no longer existed in their original form. He could tell Mac what each section had been designed for, which helped her repurpose the spaces. The weapons bay became a hybrid power regulation center. The crew quarters were converted into modular system nodes. The bridge remained mostly intact, but Mac was rebuilding it from the ground up. A 4th member joined their strange crew, a quorum named Liss, a data specialist who'd heard rumors about the impossible ship. The quorum were small, gray-skinned beings who lived for information. Liss wanted to document everything Mac was doing, insisting it was historically significant. "You're creating a new category of ship," Liss said, her large eyes reflecting the glow of her data screens. "Neither purely technological nor biological, but something in between. The academic community will study this for centuries." Mac would have wild ideas that violated physics. Tixnell would explain why they were impossible. Mac would do them anyway. They would work. Tixnell would update his calculations while quietly questioning his entire education. Vel would integrate Kryn military systems into Mac's chaotic designs, creating hybrid modules that combine the best of both approaches. Liss would document everything, providing data analysis that often revealed patterns even Mac hadn't noticed. The ship was coming alive. Systems that had been silent for 5 years began operating. The environmental controls stabilized, allowing them to work without suits. The gravity generators came online, though they fluctuated unpredictably. Mac was still working on that. Most impressively, the main engines achieved 60% power, running on a fraction of the fuel they should have needed. One evening, as the crew sat together in the mess hall eating a meal Mac had somehow cooked using a repurposed plasma conduit, Vel asked the question they'd all been thinking. "What happens when the Viren Syndicate realizes what you've built?" "They'll want the Valiant Dawn." "I haven't just been rebuilding ship systems, I've been adding features, things the Viren won't expect. These pathways don't just carry power. I can reverse the flow, creating electromagnetic pulses in specific corridors. I can seal sections independently, fluctuate gravity by deck, and reroute life support to turn areas into death traps. The Valiant Dawn knows her own interior now. Anyone who boards without authorization will be at a serious disadvantage." "I've turned the ship into a partner," Mac corrected. "She protects us, we protect her." She gathered the crew on the bridge, now fully operational with displays showing every system status. The crystal veins glowed softly behind transparent panels, pulsing with steady energy. "Let's see what she can do," Mac said, sitting in the captain's chair. It felt right somehow. Her hands moved across the controls, and the Valiant Dawn responded like an extension of her thoughts. The engines fired smoothly, lifting the massive ship from its 5-year drift. Thrusters adjusted position with precision. The navigation systems, rebuilt using human algorithms and Kryn military hardware, calculated trajectories that made efficient use of the scrapyard's chaotic debris field. They flew the Valiant Dawn through a careful pattern, testing maneuverability and response time. The ship handled beautifully, better than it had any right to. When Mac pushed the engines to 70%, the acceleration was so smooth that Vel actually laughed with joy. "She flies like a dream," the Kryn pilot said. "Better than when she was new." Heavy cruiser escorts. The VRIN syndicate had heard the rumors, seen the energy readings. They were done waiting. "Open channel," Mac ordered. Grick's face appeared on the screen, his scales gleaming with satisfaction. "Mackenzie Tors. Your deadline isn't for another 2 months, but we've decided to collect early. Surrender the vessel immediately, and we'll only increase your debt by 50%. Resist, and we'll classify you as a theft risk. You know what that means. Turn around, and I won't demonstrate what this useless ship can do to your pretty little escorts. But let's find out. Time to show the galaxy what happens when you give a human mechanic a dead ship and 6 months." Max smiled. This was going to be interesting. The bridge of the Valiant Dawn was silent except for the soft hum of active systems. Mac's crew stood at their stations, watching the 3 VRIN warships approach in attack formation. Each enemy vessel was larger than the Valiant Dawn, with weapons designed to shred salvage ships like paper. "They're charging weapons," Liz reported, her gray fingers trembling slightly over her console. "Targeting our engines and bridge." She'd prepared for this moment, but theory and reality were very different things. The Valiant Dawn had never been in real combat since her rebuild. Everything they'd done was untested under fire. "Tixnel, how are the crystal networks holding up?" Mac asked. The Thalaxian engineer checked his screens. "Stable. The ship is distributing power efficiently. But Mac, we've never tested the weapons systems at full capacity. We don't know if." "Liz, start recording everything. If we survive, this data will be valuable." Vel's hands danced across the navigation controls, and the ship twisted with surprising grace for something so large. The beams missed by meters, their heat still close enough to make the hull groan. "They're not trying to kill us yet," Vel said. Warning shots. The weapon didn't use traditional energy cells. Instead, it drew power directly from the crystal network, channeling it through a system Mac had rebuilt from salvaged parts and pure improvisation. The beam that emerged was unlike anything in standard ship databases. It shifted colors as it traveled, pulsing with the same energy signature as the ship's crystal veins. When it hit the VRIN ship's shields, something unexpected happened. The shields didn't just absorb the impact, they flickered and weakened, as if the beam was draining their power. "Impossible," Tixnel whispered. "The weapon is harmonizing with their shield frequency and using it against them." "Just human." The VRIN commander's patience ended. All 3 ships opened fire simultaneously, no longer holding back. The space around the Valiant Dawn lit up with weapons fire from multiple angles. There was nowhere to dodge. "Shields at maximum," Mac shouted. "Route all non-essential power to defense." The energy formed layers, each one absorbing and redistributing incoming fire. When a beam hit, the impact spread across the entire shield surface instead of focusing on one point. The Valiant Dawn shook from the assault, but held together. "Shields at 70%, Tixnel reported, amazement in his voice. "They should have failed already. The crystal network is compensating for damage automatically." "Make them work for it." The VRIN ships followed, more cautious. their larger size making navigation dangerous. "Mac, what's the plan?" Vel asked, threading the ship through a gap that left only meters of clearance on each side. "We can't win a straight fight," Mac said, studying the tactical display. "But we don't need to. We just need to convince them the Valiant Dawn is more trouble than it's worth." It was something she'd created almost as an afterthought, a way to coordinate systems across the entire vessel. But now she realized it could do more. "Tixnel, can we use the crystal network to broadcast a false energy signature? Make them think we're more damaged than we are, or the one thing that scares everyone in this scrapyard." The team worked frantically, modifying the crystal network to emit the specific energy pattern of a failing reactor. It took 7 minutes, 7 minutes of dodging through wreckage while the VRIN ships fired constantly. The Valiant Dawn's shields dropped to 40%, then 30%. Small fires broke out in 2 sections, but they held together. "Ready," Tixnel finally announced. "Do it," Mac ordered. The crystal veins throughout the ship pulsed with unstable light. Energy readings spiked wildly, creating exactly the signature of a cascade fusion event spiraling out of control. Every warning system in the sector started screaming. On the VRIN command ship, alarms must have erupted. Mac could imagine their sensors showing what looked like imminent detonation, the kind that would vaporize everything within 5 kilometers. For a long moment, nothing happened. The VRIN ships continued their pursuit. Then, one by one, they began to retreat. "It's working," Vel breathed. "They're backing off. They're going to try to destroy us before we explode on our own. It might disable their ship." Liz was still recording data, determined to document everything to the end. Tixnel met her eyes without fear, waiting for her decision. "Do it," Max said, "but make it count." The crystal network, which had been pretending to fail, now began to actually overload, but in a controlled way, channeled and directed like water through pipes. Energy built in the reactor core, more and more, until the entire ship was glowing. 10 seconds to critical," Tixnel announced. The VRIN heavy cannon fired. "Now," Max shouted. The Valiant Dawn released the built-up energy in a directional pulse, a wave of electromagnetic force that swept through space like an invisible tsunami. It hit the incoming weapon's fire and simply erased it, continuing forward to slam into all 3 VRIN ships. Their shields collapsed instantly. Systems went dark. The ships began to drift, dead in space. On the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, every screen flickered and went dark for 3 seconds. Then, slowly, systems began rebooting. The crystal network had protected the ship's core functions, just as Mac had hoped. "Status report," Mac said into the darkness. "We're alive," Vel said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Engines offline but repairable, shields recharging, no critical damage. They'll be operational again in a few hours, but by then..." The VRIN's face appeared and he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "This is Tors," Max said calmly. "We're leaving. The Valiant Dawn belongs to me, not your syndicate. Come after us again, and next time I won't leave your ships intact." "Understood. But here's something to think about while your systems reboot. I just defeated 3 military-grade ships with a vessel you declared worthless. What do you think I'll do with proper preparation time?" 28 minutes later, the Valiant Dawn's engines roared to life. The ship left the scrapyard, carrying Mac and her crew toward open space and an uncertain future. Behind them, the VRIN ships floated in silence, disabled but alive. A warning, not a massacre. In the captain's chair, Mac allowed herself to breathe. They'd survived. Against impossible odds, against superior firepower, against everything logical, they'd survived. "Where do we go now?" Vel asked quietly. Mac looked at the star field ahead of them, infinite and full of possibilities. "Anywhere we want," she said. "We're free." They just announced their presence to the sector in the most dramatic way possible. The Valiant Dawn was no longer a secret. The real challenges were just beginning. 2 weeks after escaping the scrapyard, the Valiant Dawn drifted in the empty space between systems, running on minimal power. Mac had chosen this remote location carefully, far from trade routes, hidden among asteroid fields where sensor scans couldn't easily detect them. The crew needed time to repair damage from the V-Rin battle and to figure out their next move. But the galaxy had other plans. "Contact," Liss announced suddenly, breaking the quiet of the bridge. "Multiple ships entering the sector, big ones." "Wait, I'm getting a hail. Audio only. They're asking to speak with the captain of the Valiant Dawn." "Put it through," Max said, keeping her voice steady. A deep, rough voice filled the bridge, speaking in galactic common with an accent Mac didn't recognize. "Captain Tors, I am Krell Vakos. Perhaps you've heard of me." Everyone in the sector knew that name. Krell Vakos was the most feared warlord in unclaimed space, a Drachner warrior who commanded a fleet that had been raiding Confederacy borders for 5 years. His ships appeared without warning, struck with brutal efficiency, and vanished before military response could arrive. Planets paid tribute to avoid his attention. "I know who you are," Max said carefully. "What do you want?" "They say you rebuilt a dead ship into something that shouldn't exist. If you run, I'll hunt you across every system. If you refuse, I'll reduce your current position to atoms. If you comply, we'll have a conversation that could benefit us both." Tixnell was the first to speak, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "This is a trap. It has to be. Our engines are still not at full capacity. A warlord doesn't make polite invitations unless he wants something specific, something he thinks we can provide. But I'm not going to negotiate. I'm going to stall, analyze his ships, and find a way out. Trust me." Ships began appearing, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Mac counted them with growing dread: 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, a dozen smaller attack craft. And in the center, a massive battleship that made the Valiant Dawn look like a child's toy. "That's his flagship," Vel whispered. "The Bloodied Crown. It's destroyed entire defense fleets." The face that appeared on screen was reptilian and scarred, with golden eyes that burned with intelligence and cruelty. Krell Vakos looked exactly like the monster from the stories, except his expression held curiosity rather than rage. "Captain Tors," Vakos said, "your ship is even more interesting in person. I'm reading energy signatures that my engineers say are impossible. Cascade fusion networks used as primary systems." He laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. "Brilliant or insane?" "Perhaps both. I need something to balance the scales, a ship that can do what others cannot, a weapon that changes the rules. A human who sees possibilities others miss, who rebuilds the broken into the extraordinary. Join me, Captain Tors, build for my fleet, create ships like yours, and I'll give you resources beyond imagination. Freedom, protection, wealth, proof that partnership benefits us both. Well, failure has consequences." "Vel, combat stations. Liss, I need you recording everything about his ships, communication frequencies, energy signatures, shield harmonics, everything. Tixnell, prepare the crystal network for combat mode." "We're going to win his combat test," Max said. "And while we do it, we're going to hack his entire fleet. Even with non-lethal settings, it could disable them in seconds." The simulation began. The Iron Fang moved with surprising speed for its size, firing suppression beams designed to overload shields and disable engines. Mac had Vel execute evasive maneuvers that pushed the Valiant Dawn to its limits, dancing between shots while closing distance. "Why are we moving closer?" Vel asked. "We should stay at range." "Tixnell, are we ready?" The Valiant Dawn closed to within 300 meters of the Iron Fang, close enough that both ships filled each other's view screens. The enemy ship fired a full spread, confident in victory. Mac triggered her trap. The Valiant Dawn's crystal network pulsed, sending out energy waves that matched the exact frequency of the Iron Fang's shields. For a moment, the two ships' energy fields synchronized, becoming one. In that moment, Mac's ship wasn't attacking, it was connecting. Lys's console lit up with data streams. It's working. We're inside their systems, uploading the infiltration code now. It took 12 seconds to upload, hidden in the energy pulses that the Iron Fang's crew would mistake for attack patterns. Then the Valiant Dawn disengaged, moving away smoothly. On the tactical display, the Iron Fang's shields flickered and failed. Its weapons powered down. The mighty cruiser went dark, floating dead in space. But Mac hadn't destroyed it. She'd taken control. On the bridge of the bloodied crown, Vakos must have been watching with very different emotions now. When his face appeared on screen again, his expression was unreadable. 12 minutes, he said slowly. You disabled one of my best ships in 12 minutes, without firing a single lethal shot. Instead, I proved a point. Because if you don't, I'll do to your entire fleet what I just did to one ship. My fleet would destroy you before you got near. On Vakos's bridge, alarms suddenly blared. The lights on the Iron Fang flickered back to life, but now they pulsed in patterns that spelled out a message in galactic common. This could be your flagship. I uploaded that code while we were talking, Max said. Right now, I have backdoor access to the Iron Fang systems. I could spread it to every ship in your fleet that uses compatible technology. Or I could delete it all, and we can part as non-enemies. You've made your point, Captain Torres, but understand this, you've also made an impression. I'll honor your request for now. But this galaxy is smaller than you think. We will meet again, and next time I'll be prepared for your tricks. The transmission ended. One by one, Vakos's ships disappeared, jumping to faster-than-light travel. Within minutes, the Valiant Dawn was alone again. On the bridge, no one spoke for several seconds. Did that really just happen? Vel finally asked. We threatened a warlord and lived, Tixnell said, mandibles clicking with what might have been hysterical laughter. That's not how these situations usually end. Vakos will be back, and next time he'll be ready. We bought ourselves time, nothing more. They'd followed her into battle twice now and survived both times. But how long could their luck hold? Now, Max said. Now we find somewhere to hide and make the Valiant Dawn even stronger, because the galaxy knows we exist. The Virin want revenge. Vakos wants our technology. And the Confederacy will have questions. Now we need to prove we can survive what comes next. And in this dangerous galaxy, that was victory enough. 3 weeks of running had taught Mac one important truth. You couldn't hide forever. The Valiant Dawn had jumped between systems, never staying long enough to be tracked. But word spread faster than any ship could travel. The human who rebuilt a dead vessel, the crew who defeated Virin's syndicate enforcers, the mechanic who outsmarted Krell Vakos himself. Stories like that attracted attention, the wrong kind of attention. Contact! Lys's voice shattered the bridge's calm. Multiple signatures dropping out of FTL, 27 ships, it's Vakos. We can't fight that many. The communication channel opened without Mac activating it. Vakos's face appeared, no longer amused or curious. Now he looked like the monster from the stories. Captain Torres, he said coldly, did you think I wouldn't adapt? After our last meeting, I had my engineers study everything we recorded about your ship. We've developed countermeasures, shielding against your frequency attacks, isolated systems that can't be hacked remotely. And most importantly, he smiled without warmth. I brought enough ships that it doesn't matter how clever you are. Last chance, Torres. Surrender the Valiant Dawn and I'll let your crew live as prisoners. Refuse and everyone dies. Vel stood at his post, hands steady on the controls despite the hopeless odds. Can we run? Mac asked quietly. Our engines are good but not that good, Vel said. They'll catch us before we can jump to FTL. Against 3 ships, maybe. Against 27. The Valiant Dawn is amazing, Mac, but it's not magic. Will last maybe 10 minutes. We surrender, Liz said softly. We live. Maybe we escape later. Her legs felt weak, but she forced strength into them. Tixnell's right. We've beaten impossible odds before. We'll do it again. We're one ship. The Cascade Fusion Network, can we overload it completely? Not just a pulse like before, everything. Channel it. We just need to give it a target and let it figure out the rest. If we could use them as cover, get close to the flagship. Make them think we've given up. We could die, Liz said quietly. We're already dead if we do nothing, Mac replied. At least this way we choose how. Liz took a shaky breath. Someone needs to record what happens. For history, I'll do it. You're not in a position to demand conditions. Your knowledge is too valuable to waste. We're not leaving you. You've been the best crew anyone could ask for. You believed in an impossible project and made it real. Now trust me one more time, please. Thank you for showing me that impossible just means nobody's tried hard enough yet. The galaxy will remember what you did. Keep your word about their safety. Mac's hands moved across the controls, entering commands that would horrify any trained engineer. She wasn't powering down the ship, she was waking it fully for the first time. Every crystal vein throughout the vessel began to glow brighter. The reactor core, which had been running at safe levels for months, began to build toward critical mass. What are you doing? Vakos's voice came through, suspicious now. Your energy readings are spiking. The Cascade Fusion Network that had saved them so many times before now became exactly what everyone had feared, a runaway reaction. But Mac had spent months learning the ship's patterns, understanding its rhythms. She didn't fight the overload. She guided it, shaped it, directed it through the crystal veins toward one purpose. The Valiant Dawn wasn't exploding. It was reaching out. Tendrils of pure energy extended from the hull, crystalline extensions of the network Mac had built. They latched onto the bloodied crown like fingers grasping prey. Vakos's ship tried to pull away, but the connection was already made. Energy began flowing, not from the Valiant Dawn into the flagship, but the reverse. Mac was draining the bloodied crown's reactor. Alarms shrieked on both ships. The massive battleship's lights flickered as power was pulled away. But more than that, the energy carried information. The infiltration codes Mac had used before, but amplified 1,000-fold. Every system on the flagship was being rewritten, reprogrammed, taken over. Impossible, Vakos roared. You're killing yourself. The overload will destroy your ship. Unless I die, you die. I survive, you still die. Your only choice is to run. You're bluffing, Vakos said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Mac triggered a demonstration. The bloodied crown's forward guns fired into empty space. Next volley goes into your cruisers, your call. Then one by one, Vakos's fleet began to jump away. First the smaller ships, then the cruisers. Finally, the bloodied crown itself, emergency systems overriding the hack just long enough to engage FTL. In seconds, Mac was alone in empty space. She collapsed into the captain's chair, every muscle trembling. The Valiant Dawn's reactor was still critical, still building toward detonation. With shaking hands, Mac began the shutdown sequence, the one she'd programmed earlier, the safety measure she'd hoped she wouldn't need. The crystal network fought her at first, like a wild animal refusing to be calmed. But Mac spoke to it, coaxed it, reminded it that they'd survive together. Slowly, impossibly, the energy levels began to drop. When the ship finally stabilized, Mac opened a channel to the debris field. Crew of the Valiant Dawn, you can come home now. You actually did it, Vel said. You faced down an entire fleet. They want to know who defeated Krell Vakos. Corporations offered fortunes for the technology. Military academies wanted to study Mac's methods. Mac refused them all. Instead, she sent a message across every communication channel in the sector. The scrapyard at SATA-III is now independent territory. Any ship, any being, any species is welcome. If you don't fit anywhere else, come here. We'll find a place for you. The scrapyard that had been her prison became something new, a haven for those the galaxy had discarded. The valiant Dawn never left. It remained the guardian of this strange new community, a reminder that with enough determination and creativity, even death could be reversed. Mac stood on the bridge one evening, looking out at the dozens of ships now being rebuilt in the scrapyard. Vel was training new pilots. Tixnell was teaching engineering to students who wanted to learn human improvisation. Liz was documenting everything for the historical archives. "What's next?" Vel asked, joining her at the viewport. Max smiled. "We keep building. We keep proving that impossible just means nobody's tried the right way yet." Another project, another chance to turn trash into triumph. The valiant Dawn hummed softly, its crystal veins glowing with steady light. The ship that everyone had called useless, the ship that had become a legend. Mac patted the console affectionately. "Good girl. We showed them, didn't we?" Because if the galaxy had learned anything, it was this: never underestimate what humanity could build from ruins.